888-7884, 888-318-7884. It's open forum. We love talking about the Catholic faith. We love talking about Jesus, about the Bible, about moral issues, philosophical issues. If you got one, give a call, 888-318-7884. Thomas will be screening the calls today. And Brandon will be running the video. No, Brandon's running the audio. And Andrew's running the video. So this is going to be quite a challenging day. We don't have a single woman in the studio here to make them behave. So good luck, Joe.
Hey, thanks. By the way, I wanted to share a funny, you were talking about just kind of the random kind of nature of good open forum questions.
Yes.
And yesterday I was at the birthday party of my friend Mark and saw this guy Vic, who I'm friends with, who goes to RCIA. And I've taught some of the RCIA classes, and I said, Vic, you ask great questions. And he said, hey, I was just asking the priest, because he was standing next to the priest at the bonfire. There were a lot of Catholics at this party.
This was a heck of a Catholic birthday party.
Yeah, it was. Well, the guy's very active in the parish.
Yeah.
And he starts asking me when Anno Domini became the norm for the calendar system. And it turned out I had just read up about this recently. And it
was it Dennis the Short?
That's a good guess.
Yeah.
No, Dionysius Exegius in the 6th century.
What? And translate Dionysius Exegius into English. It means Dennis the Short.
Or Dennis the Humble, or Dionysius the Humble.
Little Dennis, that's what we call it.
Is Dionysius the root of Dennis? Okay, fair enough. I didn't.
I guess
that's a.
I gave it in English.
Yeah,
you gave it in Latin.
I did not realize Dennis came from Dionysius. You should really be the guy we interview on this.
No,
from now on, I'm
we all know
direct
that's not true.
All Latin-related questions to you.
I told Father Hugh I was going to read. He had this document the other day. We were doing a focus episode on this document, and I said, I'm going to read that later. And he goes, you're going to have to learn Latin. And I said, well, I'll just read the English version. He goes, no one's ever translated this into English. That made me sad to think that there's a document in Latin somewhere that I can't read because no one bothered to translate it.
I have to warn you, there are a few documents like that.
Yeah, probably.
If you go on to Vatican.va and you look up papal speeches and everything, a lot of them are just in Italian or just in Latin. And it's like, come on. Now, when you realize that the wallpaper is from like 1996 on the website, that gives you a clue that maybe they're not updating this we could contract our IT department out to them and probably help out a little bit.
Again, the number for Joe, 888-318-7884. Joe is the author of a whole bunch of really good books, including one on St. Joseph. But I want to tell you about his newest book, The Early Church Was the Catholic Church, the Catholic Witness of the Fathers in Christianity's First 2 Centuries. If you are at all interested in Catholic history, if you're interested in where the church came from and what the church thought of itself in its various eras. Or maybe if you're a person who's like, I want to get back to the early church. I want to live like the early church. This would be a good book because the early church was the Catholic Church. A great book for that. Joe, you want to take some questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
Joe, on my sheet here, it says in giant letters, I can't hear anyone. Did you type that on there? Were your earphones not working before the show and you typed that, or where did that come from?
I did not. So it looks like the message is being deleted.
Yeah, it was
so hopefully someone can hear us. If not, this could be a great just screaming into the void hour.
I thought you were reading my lips when I saw that. I was like, how is he talking to me if he can't hear anything? Bill,
why didn't he let me know before?
Yeah, right. Yeah, no wonder he didn't know who Dennis the Short is. Bill in Sarasota, Florida, watching on YouTube. You are numero uno today. Thank you, Bill, very much for your call. Go ahead with your question for Joe.
Good evening, gentlemen. My question is, I am Catholic.
That's not a question.
I'm curious why.
Oh.
What's that?
He said, my question is, I am Catholic. I said, no, that's not a question.
Oh, no. I mean, let me preface that with I am Catholic.
I gotcha.
Don't let him pick on you.
Sorry, Bill.
He's been in office.
I'm loopy today. I'm a little bit loopy today.
Yeah. So I have noticed throughout the years that we Catholics seem to focus very heavily on the sin of abortion in other people. And you know, I just wonder why are we so concerned with something that should be between a person and God? That's not my business, the sin another person has in his life or her life. I'm not out there chasing people around for other sins, like if they're cheating on their wives or they're stealing or they're cheating on their taxes. Why are we so focused on that sin? Shouldn't that be between that person and God and let him deal with that?
Bill, I'm really glad you asked that question. That is a really good question I think a lot of Catholics have. And I want to give kind of a nuanced answer to it. First, I don't think we should take that's between them and God attitude to things like stealing and, committing. If someone's going around, like if you've got a serial killer in your neighborhood, you're not going to say, oh, that's just their personal sin. Because true, like their soul is obviously being harmed by their actions, but so is the public good. They're also killing innocent people. So the first and most obvious reason we care about abortion is that it's a crime against humanity. It is a human rights violation in the most serious kind of grave sense of the term. Pope John Paul II in Evangelium Vitae, the Gospel of Life, says in paragraph 58 that amongst all the crimes which can be committed against life, procured abortion has characteristics making it particularly serious and deplorable. And he quotes the Second Vatican Council, which defines it, along with infanticide, as unspeakable crimes. That when you think about like all of the other ways that we can sin against our neighbors, so take other issues that maybe we're sometimes guilty of not giving the gravity and weight to that we ought to. For instance, you can sometimes find Catholics who are dismissive of the need to care for and love immigrants, and they shouldn't be. They should take the plight of immigrants more seriously. But the people who are maybe apathetic to immigrants or don't want them in the country are not saying, let's go and we should make it legal to kill all immigrants. Or people who don't do enough to take care of the poor, they're not saying, let's kill the poor. So there are times and places where a person's sins are impacting the common good or impacting the rights and dignity of other people enough that we have both the capacity and even sometimes the moral obligation to step in as a society and say, no, you can't do this. Like if someone is abusing children, we don't just say, well, that's just their private sin, because it's not. It's an interpersonal interaction that is causing serious harm to an innocent child. So in the case of abortion, you have the gravity of murder coupled with the innocence of a child, which really does make it a particularly heinous action. But then add to that, in addition to the gravity of the crime, the innocence of the victim, you also have the sheer scope of abortion, that the sheer number of lives lost to abortion totally dwarfs all other human rights violations in terms of sheer body count, easily, by a lot. So for all of those reasons, abortion is preeminent. Abortion is the worst. It's the biggest human rights issue. It's the biggest moral issue that we're facing as Catholics, as Christians, as human beings today. Now, having said that, I want to really give weight to maybe the implicit second part of your question, which is, what about all the other issues? And I think this is something that we need to be very cautious of and very aware of as Catholics. That just because abortion is the single most grave, just because it is the worst, it doesn't mean it's the only human rights violation, doesn't mean it's the only kind of Catholic issue. And so the people who say, well, what about X, Y, and Z other issue? That's a legitimate point, and we should worry about those things as well. But sometimes when people bring those things up, they do it in a way to say, well, don't worry about abortion until you've solved poverty, or don't worry about abortion until you've, solved all of the social inequalities or lack of opportunity. And those are impossible preconditions. When Jesus says the poor will always be with you, I take that very seriously. For all of the best efforts, we haven't eradicated poverty. We can always do more, but that's the point. We can always do more. So we should take the other issues very seriously as part of the gospel of life, but we don't have to treat them all as equally severe threats. Something like unemployment is just not at the same moral level as something like abortion.
I wonder what you make of that, Bill. Does that all make sense?
It does make sense to me. I appreciate that answer. Thank you.
All right. God bless you, brother. Thank you for the call. As a matter of fact, if you want, we'll send you a copy of Joe's latest book because I appreciate you starting us off today and also being so gracious in your comment there. If you hang on, we'll send you The Early Church Was the Catholic Church. Oh, by the way, just hang on. We'll do that, and we'll be right back with more Joe Heschmeyer Open Forum right after this.
We're here for you. Call now. Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Unplanned, the true story of Abby Johnson.
I would be the youngest director in Planned Parenthood history.
She believed in a woman's right to choose.
I've had an abortion myself, so I don't have any problem with another woman making the same decision.
Until the day she saw something that changed everything.
Tiny, perfect little baby. And then it was just gone.
Now she's pulling back the curtain on the abortion industry. Unplanned.
Available at EWTNRC.com and the EWTN app.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. Our guest is Joe Heschmeyer. This hour, next hour, it'll be Jimmy Akin. Lots and lots of folks on the line, so we'll keep moving through the calls, get as many folks as we can on with Joe. Let's see where we're going now. Joe, we're going to head all the way over to San Antonio, Texas, listening on the EWTN app. John in San Antonio, Texas. We're grateful for your call. Go ahead, John, with your question for Joe.
Yes, how will you know Jesus has risen again?
Has come again?
Yes.
Okay, so just to clarify, are you asking like what are the signs leading up to the second coming, or how will we know when the second coming has happened?
How will you know when it has happened?
Oh, great! Very good question. The short answer, C.S. Lewis says it this way. He says, when the author walks onto the stage, the play is over. And I really like that image. I think it captures it very succinctly, that it'll be the end of the world, and it'll be the final judgment. If you read in Matthew's Gospel, in Matthew 25, the separation of the sheep and the goats, that idea of there will be a judgment of the living and the dead will rise and be reunited with their bodies. It'll be impossible to miss that. This will not be one of those things where, and Jesus even says, like, this isn't going to be a thing where you're saying, look, over there. It's impossible to miss it. When God's triumph over evil happens in the final form, the Catechism defines it or describes it as the final cosmic upheaval of this passing world. That's not the kind of thing that we could overlook or miss if we wanted to.
Does that get at what you wanted, John?
Well, in a way that seems a little too desirable and simple for what in the way that Jesus would come again.
And John, I'm just understanding, too simple in that you think it'll be a more complex phenomenon than Joe is describing?
What I'm saying, it will be a more complex and lengthy occurrence of him coming again.
Tell me more why you think that, if you would.
Well, it is my. I will release this information now because Jesus has come to me and has been with me for over a year and a half now. I've been speaking with him every day since, and he has helped me, the people around me, and I have written a book already, and I've written a second book that has not been published yet.
But so, John, just to be clear, so you're saying your sense is that you have a private revelation from Jesus that his second coming will be more complicated and will take more time than people like Joe and I think.
Yes.
Joe.
Yes, and the Bible.
Oh, go ahead, John.
And the Bible is to be interpreted is in a much more complex way than we know it to be. The whole Bible is a riddle.
Joe, I'd like to get your response to that.
Yeah, I'd say a couple things. One, the church is very clear that private revelation can never contradict public revelation. So whenever you have something that seems to be a spiritual visitation, or even something as simple as a dream or something where you're wondering if it's a sign, there are, broadly speaking, a number of different causes. So when Aquinas talks about dreams, he says they can be physical in origin. You have spicy food before dinner, and you have a dinner, and then you have a crazy dream that night. They can be psychological in origin. You're stressing about something at work, and then you have a work-related dream. They can also be angelic, demonic, or divine in origin, as well as human in origin. So there's 5 or 6 different possible causes of anything like that. Likewise, if you're seeing something or hearing something, that could be a psychological phenomenon, that could be a spiritual phenomenon. But even if it is a spiritual phenomenon, it may not be a good one. And one of the ways that we can test to see if it's of God or not is whether it contradicts the things that God has said. Because God is truth. He never contradicts himself. And so when he says, for instance, in Matthew 25, that when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne. Before him will be gathered all the nations, and he will separate them one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats, and so on. If you're receiving someone telling you that that's not true, that's not Jesus talking to you. Whether that's the devil, whether that's psychological, that's not of God, because he doesn't contradict himself. And the second thing is, God's word is clear, and it is sharper than a two-edged sword. Now, when we say it's clear, I don't mean that in the sense that maybe the reformers mean, where you don't need the church to interpret it. But I do mean it in the sense that it is not a riddle, that this was one of the claims the Gnostics made. And it's very clear from the New Testament that that's not true, that Jesus taught openly. He didn't have one public teaching and one secret teaching, that he taught for the purpose that even the least of these and the little ones could come to real faith. He's not trying to create some sort of esoteric secret knowledge. So again, if you're getting a message to the contrary of that, you're not getting the message from Jesus, because Jesus doesn't change his mind. He's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
John, we have a book from our colleague Jimmy Akin called The Words of Eternal Life, True Happiness and Where to Find It. We've been giving it out to lots of people, and we'd love to give a copy of it to you if you'd like. I'm very grateful for your call. If you hang on the line, Thomas will get your information, and we'll send you a free copy of The Words of Eternal Life. Our number is 888-318-7884. Joe Heschmeyer is our guest, and it's open forum. You can call and ask anything you want to ask. We're going now to Rochester, New York. David in Rochester, New York, listening on 92.7 FM. You are up next. Go ahead, David, with your question.
Hi, thank you very much. My question has to deals with evil thoughts that may be implanted into my mind. Can Satan or evil demons poke at our thoughts and implant evil into our minds? And if so, is that something we should confess as Catholics?
Oh, that's a great question. That actually dovetails really nicely with the conversation I was just having with John. You might have been on hold during that, but I mentioned there that Aquinas has a really nuanced way that he analyzes dreams. That when you have dreams, they can be psychological or physical in origin. They can also be coming from yourself, coming from demons, coming from angels, coming from God. And so he is very much of the persuasion that the devil can implant those kind of things. That he can kind of put tempting visions or horrifying visions or whatever as temptations before you. And the general rule to remember here is that something you have no control over is not something that you're guilty of in any sense. That's always true. If there's something you literally can't control, it's not your fault. And so in those senses, you don't have to confess it. Another way of saying that is that sin is a matter of the will. That when we sin, we're choosing to do something we shouldn't, or choosing not to do something that we should. And that can even include neglecting to think about it very deeply. That's one way of choosing not to choose is still a choice. But it's always a matter of the will. So when you have that, whether it's demonic or even to take the example of the internet, if something pops up that you didn't seek it out, you're not looking for it, you're not guilty if it's not something you did. Like if you've got a computer virus or, something like that. What you are morally culpable for is how you respond to it. Is this something that you give into, or is this something that you're resisting? And so if you are in any kind of doubt, it wouldn't hurt to take it to confession, but it may be an issue where you haven't actually sinned because you didn't, consent to it.
David,
sure.
What do you think? Yeah?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It could be, I watch a lot of instructional videos on the faith online, and I'm learning a lot about the Catholic faith. And, some of them talked about hell, and I don't know, maybe it's just my psychological reaction, but also maybe it could be the devil. I don't know. So that's why I was calling.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would just say if you see something not of God, something contrary to your good, resist it. It doesn't matter particularly whether it's coming from the devil or your psyche or whatever. That's less important than the fact that it's not a good road to go down.
Right. Okay. And I guess I'll just keep praying, pray.
Amen.
Yes, but it is as you said, Joe, you could always bring it to confession, but there is a way in which we don't have like manipulative control over our minds, over how I can't. Stuff is going to come into my mind that is wrong or mean or lustful or whatever, and it takes some training of the mind to learn to just let those things go and move on. And so everyone's going to have some thoughts that you didn't choose for that thought to come into your head.
Exactly. And actually one of the worst things you can do in that situation is obsessing over how much did I think about that thing, because then you end up just thinking about it that much more as you're like kind of getting into that navel-gazing cycle.
Yeah.
St. Francis de Sales, in Introduction to the Devout Life, compares it to bees, or I think it's bees. It might be flies. But I think it's flies, actually. He says you've got bears that you run away from and then flies that you just ignore. Like if there's flies at a picnic, if you get obsessed with trying to swat them all away, you're just going to ruin the picnic. You're just going to, just ignore them and just move on and pretend that they're not there. Don't indulge them. But he suggests that that's actually one of the ways the devil tries to get us down. Not even so much in getting us to consent to these small little sins, but just in discouraging us by having to fight off 1,000 little attacks rather than, one big one. That's one of the ways he kind of saps our energy. And so I think that's good advice. Ignore the flies, run from the bears.
David, thanks very, very much. Appreciate that question. Lots of folks on the line. I'm going to keep moving. We'll go to Oklahoma now. Gina in Oklahoma, watching on Facebook Live. Glad to have you, Gina. Go ahead with your question.
Hi, thank you. So praise God, today was a victory in Oklahoma for right to life. Governor Stitt stayed in execution in response to the prayers of the faithful, just a great thing. But it also sparked a conversation.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say I didn't know that, Gina, and thank you for sharing that with us. I very much appreciate it.
Amazing.
I remember I got up this morning and there was just a little headline on the news that I read about a man who was facing the death penalty today, and I'm sure many people saw that and prayed for that man. I don't know anything about the circumstances, but thank you for sharing that very, very good news.
Yes. Well, it sparked a conversation.
Gina, I'm so sorry. I talked so much that we're right up against the break. Gina, will you hold on just for a minute while we do the break?
Okay. Sure.
I'm sorry. You got me all excited. I started talking, now the music's playing. All right, we'll be right back with more Open Forum with Joe Heschmeyer on Catholic Answers Live. You got a call, got a question? 888-318-7884.
Here's a question. Is it really possible to be friends with someone who died 2,000 years ago? Maybe the problem is that we've grown way too comfortable with the story of Jesus. Nice man, right? Taught us to love one another, said not to judge people. We celebrate his birthday every year. It's time to put away this small, safe version of Jesus, says Cy Kellett. Nobody that bland could have transformed the world. In A Teacher of Strange Things, Cy presents Jesus Christ undiluted by sentiment. with all his radical words and deeds uncensored. Do you know someone, your son or daughter perhaps, or maybe your mom or dad, who needs the friendship of Jesus Christ? Do you? Order your copy of A Teacher of Strange Things by visiting shop.catholic.com today or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you. Have you enrolled in the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics? Let me ask you a more important question. Do you believe as a Catholic that you have an obligation to share the Catholic faith? In fact, the Church has answered this question, and the answer is that all confirmed Catholics are obliged to share the faith. It's actually in canon law. Catholic Answers is here to help you fulfill that obligation. Our School of Apologetics courses will equip you to help all the people you come in contact with understand what the Church teaches and why. A great place to start is with all the Catholics in your life. Learn the art of apologetics from the best of the best and start sharing the gospel today. Visit schoolofapologetics.com. That's schoolofapologetics.com.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
Matt Swaim here. Tomorrow on the Sunrise Morning Show, we'll preview the Mass readings for the Solemnity of our Lord Jesus Christ, King of the Universe, with Father Hezekiah Carnazzo and Father Jonathan Duncan. Now back to Catholic Answers Live.
Oh, yeah. A little bit of groovy music. Thank you, Brandon, for playing the groovy music. Joe Heschmeyer is our guest. I messed up with Gina in Oklahoma on Facebook Live. Gina was letting us know that the governor of Oklahoma commuted the sentence of a man who was facing death today. And I think commuted was the word you used. Is that right, Gina?
Yes, he commuted it to life without parole.
Okay. And you wanted to ask Joe something.
Yes. I had a brief discussion with my children, and one is not a believer and one is not a Catholic. The rest of us are Catholic, and I didn't realize that one did not believe that the death penalty was against the violation of a person's dignity. They felt that it was justified. Well, he adheres to sola scriptura, so he doesn't really care what the Catholic authority, what the Church says. We discussed several things and shared several articles, some from Catholic Answers and other places. But if you have something that I can refer to in Scripture that would be more compelling for someone who believes in sola scriptura to defend the Catholic stance on the death penalty, please.
Yeah, so I think it's important to distinguish a few things. Like, one stance would be to say the death penalty is always and everywhere immoral for all ages and everything else. That doesn't appear to be the mind of the Church on the matter, because the death penalty was permitted and even practiced by the Vatican until the 19th century. It's more that the death penalty existed under extreme circumstances that are no longer in place or no longer necessary, that there are adequate alternatives, that you don't need the death penalty. So the argument against the death penalty is a little subtle because there's a few parts of it. I think one good conversation starter to have with your son is to ask if he's okay with any and all forms of execution, torturing someone to death, that sort of thing. Does he acknowledge that there's any human dignity left in a person who has commit murder? Because if not, that actually does seem to run contrary to the notion that this is a person worth dying for on the cross, which is what Jesus does. And so that's an important dimension to just understand the basic aspects of the New Testament. But then second, if he says, well, no, like obviously some forms of execution are wrong, that actually opens the door to like the fact that one of the things that I think is arguably a change that we've seen over the centuries is a greater awareness of the sheer number of innocent people who've been put to death on accident, and the sheer number of times where executions go awry, even things like lethal injection, where it just becomes like things aren't administered properly and the person dies a really slow and agonizing death. There's all sorts of mishaps, either procedurally or in the implementation of the execution. So even someone who is okay with the death penalty in theory could hopefully see that the way we've practiced it has been totally arbitrary in this country. The fact that, Julius Jones, who didn't even seem to have been the actual murderer, was on death row and was about to be executed, whereas like Charles Manson wasn't on death row, because it just is like, it's so arbitrary in those kind of situations. But then in terms of the biblical case for being lenient, even to those who may be warranting death in one sense, I would point to John 8. I would point to the way Jesus treats the woman caught in adultery. You could make a sola scriptura case that based on the Torah, she should be stoned to death. But Jesus instead says, well, show her mercy anyway. And so I think the same thing is true here. Like, you can certainly make the case that there were capital offenses in the Old Testament, and Jesus doesn't explicitly abolish them in the New Testament, but he does show us that even those who might be owed the death penalty in strict justice ought to be shown mercy in kind of a Christian conception of the state and a Christian conception of the human person, that we give to people more than what they're due because God gives to us more than what we're due. I think that would be where I would go with that conversation. Getting into a little bit of the procedural stuff and then getting into kind of the basic theological framework. But I think there's probably going to be some deeper issues in how do you prove a doctrine when the New Testament doesn't explicitly say one way or the other on the death penalty. How do you prove that from sola scriptura? The problem on some level is that he has kind of a broken methodology for finding the truth.
Yeah, the problem is sola scriptura itself. Gina, what do you think?
Yeah, I appreciate you giving me the link to that scripture, and to be able to point out to him one of the things that was brought up in this last 24 hours of trying to request clemency was the execution on the 28th that went horribly awry and wasn't stopped, and it was very brutal. And so I appreciate the I appreciate the past because I do want to talk to him about it. My daughter-in-law is Catholic, and she had some great points in our discussion. Many of them, like you had talked about the growth of our culture, and that we recognize and they're not a danger to society if they're just incarcerated, and that it's not to us to seek justice. And allow justice for the government doesn't always mean execution.
Amen. I think that's a good way of putting it, because we don't want to execute people willy-nilly. We don't want to execute people for no reason. And if we can neutralize the danger to society in a non-lethal way, certainly it seems like from the little bit that I know of the Julius Jones case, it seems to be that he's no threat to society, whatever one may view of the underlying offense, that he's not currently threatening anyone. In those kind of cases, it's very hard to justify why the death penalty would be an appropriate course of action other than something like wrath.
Yeah, right. Gina, I'd like to send you. You sound like you're just a great mom, Gina. I'd love to send you Joe's new book, The Early Church Was the Catholic Church. If you'd like a copy of it, please hang on the line, and we'll get your address and send you out a copy of that book. Are you proud of this book, Joe? The Early Church Was the Catholic Church?
I'm really excited to see what people have to say about it. It's one of those things where. I think people who perform on stage probably have that sense of like you do everything you can, and then you get up there and you just wait and see how people are going to respond.
Standing ovation. That's what I'm expecting. Standing ovation.
I wish I could hear readers when they do that, but that's the difficulty with this medium.
We got time to take another call before we have to take another break. It's open forum. Joe Heschmeyer, our guest this hour. Next hour, Jimmy Akin. We're going to go to Nebraska, watching on YouTube. Blake in Nebraska. Go ahead with your question for Joe.
Hey, guys. I called last week, and you guys, I was told to call back, and so my question was, where should I, so I'm a Protestant researching Catholicism, and I was wondering what tips you guys have for where I should start my research.
Were you told to call back because we were raising money on the air at the time and we didn't have time, or why were you?
I think I talked to Blake. I think we talked, and at the time we didn't have any call screeners who could send him a book.
Oh, we didn't have any call screeners who could send them the book. Oh, okay. Because I was going to say, if we're raising money and turning away people who want to come to the Catholic faith, we need to reevaluate our priorities here, Blake.
You're our golden ticket.
Okay,
everyone give us money.
I forgot about that though. During fundraising, we don't have anybody who can send a book out. Yeah, or even get your address.
I think I remember talking to you actually, Blake. So my first question to you would be like, tell me if you can, very briefly, like, what's your denominational background or your spiritual journey? I want to know a little bit of kind of where you're coming from to give a little better answer to your question, if I may.
So I guess you could, I would probably very lukewarm, if not even lukewarm. Grew up Lutheran, but really was not living for Christ at all. But during like quarantine, I finally, I would say, is when I started living for Christ. Christ transformed my life. I would just say I'm just a Christian, non-denominational. I go to a evangelical free church, but I'm not where I stand on Protestant theology. So I'm really just like a general Christian, I guess.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's wonderful. Well, praise God that you were able to find Jesus in quarantine. He comes close even when we're socially distanced. I think so. I'm going to plug my own book here just for a second. I just wrote a book called "The Early Church Was the Catholic Church," and the argument that I make in the book is that we should care what the early Christians believed because they're in the best position to know what Jesus and the apostles taught. And I kind of get into that a little more in the book. So if that kind of thing interests you, I think that's a good place to go. Another good place to go is just exploring the question of, like, where does the Bible come from? Because one of the beautiful things about evangelical Protestants is a real love for sacred scripture. But if you start to press a little bit and say, well, how do you know which books are in scripture? That's a path that leads you right to the Catholic Church. I have a chapter that explores that in the book, but there are other books that explore that as well. Jimmy Akin has a book, The Bible is a Catholic Book, I believe is the name of it, that explores that as well. It's kind of exploring all of the dimensions to, like, where the Bible comes from and covering all the bases there. So if that's something that you find interesting, I think that's a really good place to look. Trent Horn has Why We're Catholic. So if you just want to get a better sense of, like, what is it Catholics believe, and just so you know, like, okay, what am I potentially saying yes to? That'd be a good place to go. And then finally, the Catechism, of course. The Catechism is a collection of just, like, what the Church teaches. And there's also the Youth Catechism, which, despite its name, is really intended for people up to, like, their 30s, and is just like a simplified version of the Catechism. So if you see the Catechism and think, that's too big, I don't want to start with that, the UCAT, or Youth Catechism, can actually be a good way of getting a sense of what Catholics believe that you can then go deeper in the main catechism, and there's a bunch of footnotes that'll point you to, like, where they're getting the kind of ideas for all of the different teachings.
Blake, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start. I also really like conversation. I don't know what you guys recommend, who to talk to. The priests that are in my town are very busy, so it's really hard to meet up with them. I don't know if there's any other outlets that I could go to have conversations.
I might actually know a few. Can I give you my email address on the air? And maybe I'll have the call screener give you my email address and just reach out to me, and I'll find out exactly where in Nebraska you live. I know some priests in the area. I know some good Catholics from Nebraska, and I might be able to put you in touch with some real life people to, grab a coffee or sit down and chat about all things Catholic.
Blake, I'd love to send you a book. Any of those books that Joe mentioned you'd like to just get in the mail in a couple days?
Yeah.
Or do you want to tell me which one it is, or do I guess? How would you like to do it?
I guess we can just go with Joe's book.
Oh, A Teacher of Strange Things, Who Jesus Was, what he taught, and why people still follow him.
He's trying to send you this book. He's been offloading on people all
Don't say offloading. I've been improving their life by sending them A Teacher of Strange Things, Who Jesus Was, what he taught, and why people still follow him. But the book you chose is The Early Church Was the Catholic Church. We'll send it to you. Hang on, Blake, and keep calling. We'd love to talk with you some more, okay?
All right, thank you.
All right, God bless you, brother. We got to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Open Forum with Joe Heschmeyer right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Hello, this is Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone of San Francisco. Keep your dial tuned to Catholic Answers Live.
He is only one of 4 popes honored as the Great.
Matthew Bunson and the Doctors of the Church.
St. Leo I was pope at a time when Roman civilization was being overrun by barbarian armies. He stood as a light in the darkness and even saved the city of Rome from destruction by Attila and the Huns. Leo died in 461.
For more about the Doctors of the Church, visit doctorsofthechurch.com.
You've heard that St. Paul Street Evangelization supports hundreds of teams of evangelists sharing the good news. But did you know that some of these teams are public prayer stations? Set up a sign on the sidewalk and offer prayer and encouragement to those you encounter. Everyone needs prayer. Try this new method of witnessing to Jesus. Contact St. Paul Street Evangelization to get started at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. Out of the whole Catholic Answers Live catalog, these are the books Joe recommends. The early church was the Catholic Church, Why We're Catholic, and the Bible is a Catholic book. No other books. He doesn't mention any other books. Those three are the three he recommends.
Can you think of any other people at Catholic Answers who've written books? I'm coming up short.
Gary Machuda has a fantastic new book.
That's a great point, actually.
Have you seen that book? It really is good. It really is good. Revolt Against Reality. Tim Staples wrote a little thing called Behold Your Mother. You ever heard of that?
Look, I could just say go to shop.catholic.com and order one of everything.
I'm going to send you a catalog of our books just so you know what books we publish. Peter in Buffalo, and if you're in Buffalo, Station of the Cross, that's where you're listening. Peter, go ahead with your question for Joe Heschmeyer.
Hi, how are you guys doing?
Good, thank you.
Basically, I mean, it might sound like a childish type of question, so forgive me if it sounds that way, but I've often thought, it's like a two-part question. I've often thought about this. The first part is, when God and, like, same with the archangel, sent down, I don't know if it was like a third of the angels with Lucifer and, down to hell. I often wondered, is Lucifer and all the demons that are down there, all the fallen angels, aren't they in pain? Like, I know that, like, if I died and I went to my soul went to hell, we're taught that you would be, like, horrible. I mean, they tell you different things, you know what I mean? But you'd be in excruciating pain for eternity or whatever. So, like, number one, aren't they? Because they're down there.
Okay.
And number two, the other question is, it's kind of connected to that, I guess. And maybe I don't know if it's a stupid question, but if you pass on, maybe we wouldn't know the answer to this. I guess what I'm trying to think of is, like, if I ever knew that somebody that I knew had gone to hell, and I guess you would only know that after you pass on yourself, there would be like no ways of doing any type of, like, communication or, like, prayer
to people in hell,
their soul. Yeah,
all
because once you're in hell, you're
first of all, let me just say, Peter, not a single childish question in there. Those are all really, really good questions, actually. Let's start with the demons. As Peter was saying, we do know that a human in hell would be suffering, but are the demons suffering in hell?
Yeah, so the Catechism talks about the chief suffering of hell being separation from God. And so we know that the devil and the demons are separated from God. Now, they enjoyed, think about it. These were angels who, Lucifer means light bearer. They had these very glorious positions, and they traded that glory for something really ugly. And there's a profound suffering there. And we have a sense from the book of Revelation that the suffering gets worse at the end of time, that their rebellion against God is finally just kind of stamped out and defeated in a final sort of way. But even now, as they're in rebellion from the only one who could ever make them happy, they can't be happy apart from him like that. That's a tremendous suffering. But then the other question is, can we contact them? And the short answer, or can we contact, like, lost souls? No. Don't play around with that. You don't want to open those kind of doors. For one thing, if someone is totally cut off from God in hell, they're not going to be the lovable person you may remember. Like if they are in a place where they have finally and completely rejected God, they have finally and completely rejected goodness and everything that you loved in them. It's in a real way, a rejection of themselves as the creatures made by God. And so if you could contact them, I think you'd be horrified of what remains. I think you'd be horrified of kind of what they'd become without the assistance of grace, without all of the innumerable ways that God pours out his goodness in the lives of each one of us every day. That without those things, I think any of us would be quite monstrous. So we wouldn't want to contact the souls in hell, and nor should we. We shouldn't be playing around with that or opening those kind of doors, because if you try to open those doors, without being too ominous, I think you wouldn't like who would come through.
Peter, very excellent questions, and I appreciate them. I'd like to send you a book as well, and I've been giving this away more and more lately because I really like this book. It's called The Words of Eternal Life. It's by our friend Jimmy Akin. If you would like a copy of it, hang on the line. Thomas will get your address, and we'll send you The Words of Eternal Life, True Happiness and Where to Find It. You sound like a very thoughtful person, and I think you will enjoy this book. I am going to just keep motoring through because every line stays full. If you're on the line, by the way, when we get to the top of the hour here, don't worry. Jimmy Akin coming in second hour to answer your questions, but we'll get as many answers as we can from Joe Heschmeyer this hour. I mean, we're paying him for the hour. Might as well. Let's go to Duke in Florida, listening on 920 AM. Duke, go ahead with your question for Joe Heschmeyer.
Hello?
Hi, Duke.
Yes, hi. I'm right here. I'm hanging in there.
All right, go ahead with your
question. I gotta wait.
No, you're on the air, Duke.
Wait too. I am on the air?
Yeah, you're on the air with Joe Heschmeyer.
Hi, Duke.
Oh, I am. Hi, Joe. Yes, I listen to you and I learn a lot. Have you ever read, Joe, the groundbreaking book, By Man Shall His Blood Be Shed, A Catholic Defense of Capital Punishment by Edward Fazer and Joseph Embetset? Have you ever read that book?
I have not. It's on my reading list, though.
I'm ahead of Joe.
The book.
Well,
yeah, because I haven't.
You can direct this.
I've only read part. I've only read part of the book, but we did an interview, and I'll recommend it to you, Duke. We did an interview with Dr. Fazer on Catholic Answers Focus, in which he quite brilliantly defended his view that capital punishment is endorsed by Christian faith. But go ahead. What is that? The only question, or did you?
Well, no. Well, we know that for 2,000 years until your present apostate pope cut the New Way of Covenant out of the Bible. The Catholic Church authorized it. They legit.
Oh, I did. It's going to seem like Joe. I swear, it's going to seem like I just hung up on him.
It looks a little.
I didn't do that. Now I could have interrupted him when he called the Pope the apostate Pope, and
I don't think there was going to be a really positive.
But I didn't interrupt him. I was letting him make his point, and then he dropped on me. And so I mean, I would have said, please don't refer to the Pope as the apostate Pope, because basic manners prevail, and also our love for the Vicar of Christ. But I didn't get a chance to say it, and I swear to you, Joe, I did not hang up on him. But just in general, would you say Pope Francis has tampered with?
Here, I can throw this out. Pope Francis, not an apostate. An apostate, someone who.
Thanks for throwing that out.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
I'll take the softball.
Okay.
I think people don't even know what the word apostate. I mean, people use heretic and apostate and all sorts of these things interchangeably.
But the Pope has demonstrably not committed apostasy.
Yeah, exactly. He is not rejecting some defined point of doctrine, much less is he rejecting the gift of faith or denying Jesus, even if you disagree with his views on the death penalty. And I think if you compare the Catechism paragraph in the newest edition of the Catechism, even to some of the things that he said, you can probably see the charism of office working. that some of his statements about the death penalty seem more extreme. But if you read what's actually in the Catechism, it's much more nuanced, much more moderate, much more defensible in light of even recent Catholic teaching, very clearly up through Pius XII on the role of the death penalty and its legitimate uses. I think the statement that went along with the newest addition to the Catechism, there was a statement to bishops that traced how popes have increasingly, even prior to Pope Francis, popes have increasingly looked askance at the death penalty. But I think for the reasons that I mentioned earlier in the hour, that there's just not the need for the death penalty there was. Like, if you're in a world where there's not a sophisticated prison system and your choices are to let someone go about the community killing everyone or put them to death, well, the death penalty makes sense there. But if you're in a situation like we're in the modern world, you've got more choices than those two. So we don't need to rely on, what were the options facing someone in the Bronze Age to determine whether the death penalty is appropriate in the modern world or not.
Wait, I got to clarify something with you. You're not saying that the Bible was written in the Bronze Age, right?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Yes.
Because a lot of people say that the Bible is a Bronze Age book. It's actually not a Bronze Age book, and I know you know that, Joe. But I just wanted to clarify that.
No, but some of the oldest parts of the Old Testament, when we're looking at the Torah, when we're looking at Moses, when we're looking at like the pre-Davidic stuff, that is strictly speaking in the Bronze Age.
I see. Like Moses himself would have lived in
exactly.
late
So when we're
part
talking
of the
about
Bronze Age, yeah.
the Torah permits the death penalty, because when we're not usually looking at here's Jesus saying, execute this person, because you're not going to find those passages.
Right.
So instead, people are going off things much, much older than the time of Christ.
Yeah.
And saying, well, these were the options facing Israel then, or these were the option, facing the people of God then. Therefore, this is what we should do 3,000-4,000 years later. And I'm saying that we can do better than that kind of argument. Now, in that, I am not actually critiquing Ed Feser's book because I've never read it. I intend to read it, and there might be some very good arguments in it. I know Avery Cardinal Dulles has a good First Things article from years and years ago on the death penalty, and he makes a pretty good argument there. But I haven't read Feser's book.
It's always profitable to read Avery Dulles. I've never yet run into an occasion where it wasn't profitable to read Ed Feser, but neither is the Pope. So as much as I admire them and value their teaching, the Pope's the Pope. And I'm sticking with that. I'm sticking with the Pope's the Pope. All right, just so that people know, Jesus lived in the age of steel. I mean, that is so far beyond the Bronze Age. All the prophets lived in the Iron Age, which is also well beyond the Bronze Age. Maybe Abraham, maybe Moses, if you stretch it, lived in a Bronze Age. But other than that, no. Stop saying Bronze Age book. Joe Heschmeyer, I really love talking with you.
Likewise. I had a good time. I enjoyed Jimmy Akin next hour. I think it'll be a good show.
Oh, yeah, I know. And I hope we're going to play the groovy music for Jimmy, because you got the groovy music this hour. Joe's new book is called The Early Church Was the Catholic Church, the Catholic Witness to the Fathers in Christianity's First 2 Centuries. The Catholic Witness of the Fathers in Christianity's First 2 Centuries. You can get it now at shop.catholic.com. It's on sale. Everything's on sale. Even another little book called A Teacher of Strange Things. Thanks, Joe.
See you, Si.
Jimmy Akin next. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. As promised, Jimmy Akin in studio with us. If you've got a question, it's very welcome here because it's open forum. 888-318-7884. Be aware, the phones usually fill up pretty quickly when Jimmy's here. So go ahead and dial if you'd like to ask him your question. 888-318-7884. Jimmy is senior apologist here at Catholic Answers, the author of The Bible is a Catholic Book and The Words of Everlasting Life, True Happiness and Where to Find It, which you heard us give. I think we gave it away 3 times last hour.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
How are you, Jimmy Akin, senior apologist?
I'm doing just fine, Sly Kellett, host of Catholic Answers Live.
That's very good. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah.
A couple questions for you. First of all, Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World.
Yeah.
I know you think I'm going to ask you about tomorrow, but
I do.
What's going to happen the day after Thanksgiving? Will there be an episode the day after? Oh, there will. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Now I want to know.
We deliver an episode every Friday, and that includes Fridays and holiday weekends.
I think Christmas Eve is a Friday.
It is. So is New Year's Eve.
We're going to get a little... Oh, yeah, that's right. So we'll get a Christmas Eve and a New Year's Eve episode.
Yep.
All right. Very good.
And for those, what we typically do is we use weird questions. And so
great.
That way we get a little bit of a break, which means I get a little more time to prepare additional scripts for the future.
Yeah.
But people still get an episode of interesting stuff to listen to. And so we'll have a Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve, and New Year's Eve Weird Questions this year.
Very good. Very good. And what drops tomorrow?
Tomorrow we're dropping out of an airplane with D.B. Cooper, the mysterious hijacker who leapt from a plane in 1971. This month. This is the 50th anniversary of his jump.
Oh.
Yeah, and so we're doing that. We also have dropping some new graphics. We have some additional editing assistance with the video on the video version of the podcast on my YouTube channel, and so we have animations of DB Cooper coming out of the plane and other things. So people can check that out at youtube.com/Jimmy Akin, and I hope you'll subscribe while you're there because I'm trying to grow my YouTube channel and I'd appreciate it.
Oh, that's great. I'm so glad that it's growing and you got people doing graphics for you and all kinds of cool stuff like that. I have to be honest with you, Jimmy. I would think DB Cooper would be almost like the first one you would do. Like DB Cooper is the mystery, isn't it? Isn't that like everybody knows about the DB Cooper mystery?
Well, no, not everybody does.
Yeah.
But also I try to, and our first mystery was ghosts.
Oh, yeah.
Which, of course, always could be what D.B. Cooper ended up as if his parachute didn't open.
Yeah, that's possible.
But no, for our first episode, I wanted to pick something that was a mystery that people were familiar with and was very popular and that had some truth to it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to start with a mystery where we were just going to, debunk it.
Uh-huh.
And so Ghost was a natural starting point. And then I try, when reasonable, to time episodes to coincide with anniversaries. And so this year we had the 70th anniversary of Pearl Harbor, the 50th anniversary of D.B. Cooper, and the 20th anniversary of 9/11. So we've been doing anniversary episodes this fall.
I'm curious to because you said D.B. Cooper could have ended up as a ghost. That's one of the possibilities.
Yep.
Is that
even if he didn't, even if his parachute did deploy, I mean, he would be like 95 now. So.
Yeah. All right. I'm pretty sure it was Loki, but I'm interested to hear if you think he survived. Because I think there are people who say, well, he didn't survive that jump, but he could have survived the jump.
Oh, yeah, and his jump is not nearly as dangerous as people make believe. Uh-huh. It's actually, there are skydiving services today that use the same kind of airplane and let you duplicate the D.B. Cooper jump for fun.
Do you hold the briefcase on your way down?
You can if you want. He didn't have a briefcase, though.
Oh,
he strapped the money to his body.
888-318-7884, the number. Go ahead and ask your question. Jimmy Akin here to answer it for the next hour. Oh, my goodness.
So now we all know what size ringtone sounds like.
I know. Oh, Jimmy, it's just I don't know what's the matter with me. I brought my phone into the studio.
Good.
Yeah,
good.
I know you think it's good.
Yeah,
because you always tell me, keep your phone on you.
You're impossible to reach.
I am impossible to reach, And I don't bring my phone into the studio because I think that's going to happen. What just happened?
Well, I leave mine on vibrate all the time. I don't have that problem.
I have a lot of problems you don't have, Jimmy. I don't want to talk about my problems. Let's go to this question comes from. Oh, let's go to Drew in Michigan. Drew in Michigan, watching YouTube. Thanks for waiting, Drew. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy. Drew.
Hello.
Hi, Drew. Go ahead.
Hi. So my question is regarding something from the Deuterocanon. I'm a Protestant. I recently studied through the Deuterocanon, and I have to say I was blown away by the beauty and the richness of a lot of the stuff I found in those books. But there were some things that seemed to not mesh well with the rest of the canon, and one of the things was the view of women that I found in some of the books. Particularly, I'm thinking of Sirach. There's the chapter 25, verses 24 to 26, where it talks about daughters kind of being a liability, and if your wife doesn't obey you or listen to you, then divorce her. And then further on in chapter 42, it actually says that the wickedness of man is better than the righteousness of women. And again,
clearly hyperbole.
It just doesn't seem. Oh yes, I understand that, but hyperbole seeming to say that there's some kind of moral superiority there that I don't see in the rest of Scripture.
Don't know that I'd take it that way, but how can I help you?
Well, I really would like to, my best friend is Catholic. We deployed together, and he asked, this is something that came up in our conversations, and he said, well, you should bring that up on the call. So I just kind of wanted to see what your guys' response to that was and how you kind of reconcile that with...
Okay. So the Deuterocanonicals, like all of the books of the Bible, are products of their time. And they weren't dictated by God. That's not how divine inspiration works. The biblical authors used their own backgrounds, or I should say, God used the backgrounds of the biblical authors in the process of composing the work. It's not like they were sitting there just taking dictation through an earpiece like a secretary would. And so even though the documents are divinely inspired, they reflect the time and culture and personalities of the individuals who wrote them. And that means, especially in the Old Testament documents, you're going to be encountering attitudes regarding social situations that were common in the Old Testament period. And in the ancient world and in the ancient Near East in particular, women were not treated the way they are now. And the attitudes regarding women were not the same as they are now. And that's not just something that you find in the Deuterocanonicals. You also find that in the Protocanonicals. For example, in the book of Numbers, there's a trial by ordeal that a husband who has become suspicious that his wife is committing adultery can put her to find out if she's been committing adultery or not. But there's no parallel where a wife gets to put her husband to a trial by ordeal to find out if he's been committing adultery. So there's a definite male-centric perspective that was present in ancient Israelite culture, and we should be frank in acknowledging that. And so you do find that there are attitudes like this expressed. You mentioned, for example, daughters being a liability. And there's a truth there in the ancient world. Daughters were an economic liability. In a way, sons were not, because sons remained associated with the family even after they were married. They contributed to the wealth. They contributed to the family's prestige. They contributed to the propagation of the family line. Whereas daughters married into other families, and they frequently took dowries with them and so forth. So daughters were a liability in a way that sons were not. And it wouldn't be unnatural for a person living in that culture to express that fact. You'll also find comments regarding women, adult women in the Protocanonicals that jar modern sensibilities. Like, for example, there's a passage in the Protocanonicals that says, a nagging wife is like a constant dripping on a rainy day. That noise just won't stop is the message. And so, okay, well, that may be a husband's view, but it doesn't give the wife's alternative view about the problem of a lazy husband that's not doing what you want. So, yeah, we do find that these documents reflect the attitudes of their day. Does that mean God approves the attitudes of the day? No, it doesn't. This is something Jesus made very clear in his teaching on divorce, where he said, look, the only reason Moses let you divorce your wives was because your hearts were hard. You were not willing to accept, in other words, the abolition of divorce. And so God tolerated various attitudes in Israelite culture and even made legal provisions for them, as he then proceeded to educate his people more greatly in his ways over the course of a period of more than 1,000 years. And by the time we get to Jesus, we have the full revelation of God's will. And obviously, Jesus treats women in a very respectful way. We see that through multiple indicators in the Gospels. We also see the other New Testament authors taking a much more positive attitude towards women than was common in ancient Jewish society. And even the other New Testament authors themselves are, they're not Jesus, they're not perfect, but we do see this education in God's ways proceeding over the course of salvation history. And we just have to acknowledge when we encounter passages that jar modern sensibilities, sometimes it's the modern sensibilities that are wrong. People today have no problem killing unborn babies, but you find the authors of the Bible having a much healthier respect for unborn children than modern sensibilities do. But if we do find something that is morally problematic, we need to do the kind of critical discernment that Jesus urged us to do in distinguishing between what the Israelites thought and what they were prepared to accept and what God's ultimate will is.
And I got to leave it there because we got to go take a break. But thank you very, very much for starting us off, Drew. Appreciate it. Hey, tomorrow starts that online virtual conference of apologetics that we've been mentioning all this week. You can sign up for the conference by going to Catholic.com. Look for the banner at the top of the page to register. It's a free registration. Jimmy's going to be part of it. Matt Frad, Carlo, a bunch of our other guys here, and some other very, very fine apologists. Lots of stuff. And there's also opportunities for question and answer periods with some of the apologists. So check it out.
Including me.
You're going to do a question and answer. And
yeah.
Do you happen to know which day you're on? Or do it?
Yeah, it's tomorrow morning.
Oh, you're on tomorrow morning. So tonight would be a great time. Go register and you could be part of the full conference. It's a 2-day conference tomorrow and Saturday. Just go to Catholic.com, look for the banner at the top of the page, and register for the virtual apologetics conference.
Let us help you with your question today on Catholic Answers Live.
Homeschool Connections, an online provider of courses for your Catholic homeschool, is a sponsor of Catholic Answers Live. Homeschool Connections website is homeschoolconnections.com.
Do you have a question but prefer to ask it privately? Catholic Questions can help. Go to CatholicQuestions.com to ask your question online, email us, drop us a letter, or give us a call. Longtime Catholic Answers Live apologist and author Jim Blackburn or another Catholic Questions apologist will be happy to assist you. Catholic Questions proudly supports Catholic Answers Live, so visit us at CatholicQuestions.com today. That's CatholicQuestions.com.
The power of prayer simply means that words have an effect. For example, when a couple says, "I do," it literally changes two people to becoming one in marriage. When you say, "I love you," it changes us and it gives us value. The power of prayer is in the words and in the sentiment, but it's also in the fact that God, who is omnipotent, all-powerful, answers our prayers.
Jimmy Akin, our guest this hour. I'm Cy Kellett, your host, and it's open forum. You can ask whatever you like. 888-318-7884. Heading down to Florida. Chris in Florida, watching on YouTube. You're up next with Jimmy. Go ahead, Chris, with your question for Jimmy Akin.
Hey, Jimmy, how you doing?
Just fine.
So I was reading through church history, and what I was noticing is there was a number of popes that came from Greece. And I know that today Greece is one of the major Orthodox countries. So I was wondering if the fact that there was all these bishops of Rome come from Greece support the papacy, because why were they becoming bishops of Rome? And was there anything like that going on vice versa, where bishops in the West were becoming bishops in the East?
Well, so the reason that you have bishops from Greece and other Eastern countries becoming popes is because you had a lot of mobility in the early Christian community, and Christianity took off in the East first, and I mean primarily, and it grew there faster first. And so you had people coming to Rome, which was the imperial capital, just like people here in the United States, even if they're born somewhere else, they may go to Washington, D.C., because that's a center of power and influence. And people did that in the ancient world, too, with Rome. So, as they say, all roads lead to Rome, and partly because the Romans built them that way. And so you'd have Christian travelers from other parts of the empire coming to Rome, and they'd settle down there, and some of them would become church officials, and some of them would even rise to become the Pope. So that's essentially why that would happen. Now, back in that day, the Pope was elected from the local Roman clergy. Today, the Pope is elected globally. He can come from anywhere in the world, which is in fact, a good example of that right now is Pope Francis. I remember when he was first elected, he came out on the balcony and announced that the cardinals had sought a pope from el fin de mundo, from the end of the world, which meaning the tip of South America, which is sometimes called fin de mundo. But have there been Western bishops who became the leaders of Eastern dioceses, of Eastern sees or eparchies? Well, I'm sure the answer is yes. I don't know. I don't have examples springing to mind by name, but I'm sure that's happened. In terms of, is this an argument for the papacy? Well, the fact that there were Greeks and other Easterners who became pope is certainly a sign of the openness of the Catholic Church to people from every part of the Christian world. And so it does, in a certain way, emphasize the Catholicity or universality of the papacy, but it's not an intrinsic argument for the papacy. It's a nice thing that happens, but it's not an essential component of the papacy, and so I wouldn't see it as providing a positive argument for the papacy.
Does that make sense to you there? Wait, why did I click the wrong button? Chris, that makes sense to you?
Yeah, thank you for your knowledge, Jimmy. I appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, thank you, Chris. We're going down to Ohio. We're going back up to Ohio now. Listening in Ohio, Richard, you are next. Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, thanks, Si. Thanks, Jimmy. So I go to an Eastern Catholic parish, and there is a Protestant who's been joining us for some time. And in my conversations, he has mentioned how he has hesitancy with the concept of the hierarchical structure within the Catholic Church, but he's somewhat attracted to the hierarchical structure of the Orthodox Church. And he does seem to have a sacramental view of several of the sacraments, not all of them, but I was just wondering if you could give me a little bit pointers in how to go about talking about the structures of both churches and maybe the history behind them.
So does he cite particular features of the structure of the Catholic Church or the Orthodox churches that he considers significant, that make a difference for him?
Yeah, he mentioned how the Catholic Church seems to be very rigorous in how it's structured and how it has one leader, the Pope, whereas the Orthodox have have many different leaders that seem more equal. I did somewhat jokingly point out to him that some of the Orthodox also have someone named the Pope at the top. But he seems to like the chaotic nature of the several different churches not reporting up to one guy.
Okay. So I would say that that this issue can be approached from a number of perspectives. One of them is purely human. In a human organization, if you want the organization to adhere, it tends to need a single leader if you really want it to survive and do its function. I mean, even social clubs like dancing clubs that I've been part of, they have presidents. You need someone to lead the meeting. You need somebody. In fact, I tend to end up in that role. But although I've started setting boundaries. But, social clubs have leaders. Any kind of formal institution that's designed to perpetuate itself across time needs one. A group of friends going out to watch a movie together don't need a formal leader, but then that's an ad nonce or for the moment organization that's not formal and isn't meant to perpetuate itself across time in this way. And so we see just on a human level the value of having reporting to a single leader who's responsible for what happens with an organization. That's true of churches. It's true of nations. It's true of corporations. It's true of social clubs. It's just natural, given the way God built hierarchy into human nature, for humans to gather together in groups that have single leaders. Originally, that was families and tribes, but that same model, which is built into us, has been replicated in many other situations, and you would expect it to be replicated by Jesus in his church. So here we come to the New Testament evidence. Do we see evidence of Jesus establishing a church with a single leader? And in fact, we do. It's very clear at St. Peter. There are various ways to show that, but we do see that Jesus intended his church to be what in Catholic circles and in Protestant circles is sometimes called a visible institution, meaning not just a church that's the invisible union of all believers, but a hierarchically structured body that has members and leaders and laws and things like that. There's a paper on my personal website called Why Be Catholic? An Exercise for Evangelicals. It's the notes from a speech I gave, or a lecture I gave some years ago at an evangelical college. And you might want to share that with your friend. Once again, the paper is called Why Be Catholic? An Exercise for Evangelicals, and it's at jimmyakin.com. And in it, I go through and I show the biblical evidence to show, yes, Jesus intended a visible church. He intended it to have a hierarchy. He intended Peter to be the leader of the hierarchy, and he intended that church to propagate itself across time all the way to the end of the world. So we would expect to find a single church that is in visible communion with itself, that has a single leader based on the office of Peter today, and that's the Catholic Church. Now, looking then at Orthodox churches, well, unfortunately, it's not a single church. And while there tends to be a single leader within each Orthodox church, notice how that pattern replicates.
Yeah.
Even in the Orthodox communion, each individual church has a single head. Well, unfortunately, not all of those heads are in communion with each other. And so you have a fractured unity that would seem to be at variance with the manifest will of Christ. I mean, not only can you show from passages where he discusses his church, like Matthew 16, where he says, my church, not my churches, but he also prayed for Christian unity in a rather big way on the night of the Last Supper. If you read the Gospel of John, it covers that, such as in John chapter 17. So the idea of a loose group of churches that don't have a single head doesn't fit the biblical model for how Jesus established his church, and it also is at variance with his manifest will regarding Christian unity. Another little short thing that I wrote that you can also find at jimmyakin.com, because when I was Protestant, becoming more aware of these issues, I had to consider the issue of, do I become Catholic or do I become Orthodox? And I decided that the biblical evidence better supported the Catholic Church, and I wrote about that and some other reasons I became Catholic in a little piece called Why I Am Not Eastern Orthodox, and that's also at jimmyakin.com.
Thank you very, very much, Richard. Appreciate the call and the question. It's open forum. Jimmy Akin is our guest. Anyone's welcome to call with any question at all. 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. Right now, we've got a big sale going on over at shop.catholic.com. Get everything there on sale, 10, 20, 25, sometimes even 50% or more off. Shop.catholic.com. Hey, if you're on the line, hang on the line. We're only going away for a few seconds, and then we'll be back and continue. If you have a question and you haven't dialed yet, go ahead and dial. There's at least one line open now, 888-318-7884. Jimmy Akin, our guest. Open forum. More right after this.
Have you enrolled in the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics? Let me ask you a more important question. Do you believe as a Catholic that you have an obligation to share the Catholic faith? In fact, the Church has answered this question, and the answer is that all confirmed Catholics are obliged to share the faith. It's actually in canon law. Catholic Answers is here to help you fulfill that obligation. Our School of Apologetics courses will equip you to help all the people you come in contact with understand what the Church teaches and why. A great place to start is with all the Catholics in your life. Learn the art of apologetics from the best of the best and start sharing the gospel today. Visit schoolofapologetics.com. That's schoolofapologetics.com. Here's a question. Is it really possible to be friends with someone who died 2,000 years ago? Maybe the problem is that we've grown way too comfortable with the story of Jesus. Nice man, right? Taught us to love one another, said not to judge people. We celebrate his birthday every year. It's time to put away this small, safe version of Jesus, says Cy Kellett. Nobody that bland could have transformed the world. In A Teacher of Strange Things, Cy presents Jesus Christ undiluted by sentiment, with all his radical words and deeds uncensored. Do you know someone, your son or daughter perhaps, or maybe your mom or dad, who needs the friendship of Jesus Christ? Do you? Order your copy of A Teacher of Strange Things by visiting shop.catholic.com today or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
Matt Swaim here. Tomorrow on the Sunrise Morning Show, we'll preview the Mass readings for the Solemnity of our Lord Jesus Christ, King of the Universe, with Father Hezekiah Carnazzo and Father Jonathan Duncan. Now back to Catholic Answers Live.
No, Brandon. I'm not talking over the music. Oh, now you got me to talk over the music. There it is, a little bit of groovy music. Thank you, Brandon.
So
Thanks for
you're
playing.
saying no go Brandon?
No, that's Brandon running the board in there, Jimmy. Don't get me in trouble. Our number is 888-318-7884. It's Thursday. We play the groovy music on Thursday. Tomorrow, Friday, Jimmy's going to be here and we're going to do Bible questions.
Yeah.
And Brandon, I'm
be
just going to
thinking
say,
about your Bible questions.
Yeah, but think of all Bible questions are welcome. But Brandon, an opportunity maybe to play the groovy music twice in 1 week because Jimmy's going to be here tomorrow. Just throwing that out at you. All right, let's go. Where are we going? Oh, I was going to read a question from you to you from Twitch chat, which Twitch chat is. I have no idea what it is, Jimmy.
It's a chat that's associated with Twitch.
Okay, good. St. Louis Cardinals 11 asks this question. I suppose you just pick a name. I don't think his parents named him St. Louis Cardinals 11.
Yeah, it says he's 15 years old.
Is that what happens on Twitch, Brandon? You just select a name, and this is your nom de Twitch? Yeah, okay. In my theology class, we were talking about whether a traditional family, only father works and mom stays at home, or non-traditional family lifestyle, mother works or both parents work is more beneficial. Is there a definite answer?
Well, it depends on what you mean. If by definite answer you mean a single answer that fits all situations, the answer is clearly no. There are various situations that families can find themselves in where having a father who works outside of the home and a mother who stays at home is clearly not the best option, or having a non-working mother. An example that I can cite off the top of my head from the Bible is Tobit's family. In the book of Tobit, Tobit becomes blind and is unable to work, and so his wife takes over the responsibilities of earning money for the family. And of course, at the time, there were much more limited economic opportunities for women. There were only certain types of work that women could get money for. And so he notes that his wife did the kind of work that women do, but she was the breadwinner for the family because her husband was disabled and could not work. So there are clearly different circumstances, and these change by time and culture and technology. There are opportunities for things now that there didn't used to be technologically as well as culturally. And so there's not a single size fits all answer. If one wanted to somehow average out all cultures across all history and make a proposal, well, you could do that, but the answer would be debatable, and I don't know a good a good scientific way of averaging out all cultures across all times and measuring all of the relevant variables.
He didn't ask about this model, but what about the model where you just win the lottery and everybody stays home? I've always thought that's the...
Yeah, so they tried that actually a good bit in England. Yeah, not necessarily with the lottery, but with inherited wealth.
Oh yeah, that's
where
right.
You'd have people who don't have to work their entire life because they're wealthy. There's even a great scene in an episode of Downton Abbey where some of the characters are discussing the upcoming weekend, and the Dowager Countess, who is very old school, is like asking sincerely, "What is a weekend?"
Every day's a weekend for her.
Yeah, she doesn't have a weekend, and so she's just used to not working. Period.
Yeah.
And while that lifestyle may be attractive, it also can have a corrosive effect on the people, because there is satisfaction to be gained from work, and living a life of constant pleasure where you never strive and achieve and have the satisfaction of having done something and built something and earned something can have a morally corrosive effect, and it can lead to, as in the case of some of the British nobility, dissipation and bad behavior.
Right. Yeah. I still wish my parents had raised me as landed gentry. I used to ask them as a child, couldn't I just be landed gentry?
Well, you could have joined the gentry another way.
How's that?
Well, if the fairies had taken you to their palace and given you food and you ate it, you would have become one of the gentry, according to Irish folklore.
It never happened, though, Jimmy. Harrison in Kentucky, watching on YouTube. You are up next. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy Akin.
Hi, I actually called a couple of nights ago. My wife and I are in the process of converting to Catholicism.
Mm-hmm.
So questions keep popping up in my head.
Okay.
Today we were talking about it, and one of the things that we don't really know what to do with is the concept, being Southern Baptist and being pretty familiar with the Reformation. This is kind of a sticky issue for us, but the role of indulgences and how they work, and the treasury of merits and how that plays a role in our final salvation.
Okay.
I guess that, if you have an explanation of that, that would be helpful.
Okay. Well, it really doesn't play a role in our final salvation. It's also not, and be a little careful of what you may have heard about this previously, because you'll hear language used in Protestant circles describing this concept that actually does not correspond to the church's language or understanding, like transfer of merit is something you'll often hear about when Protestants are talking about this. And the church does not use that language. Merit is not transferred from one person to another. I would suggest, as a general background, now I have a couple of chapters, or at least one chapter that has 2 parts, in my book, The Drama of Salvation, that talks about indulgences and the biblical principles that underlie indulgences. And they really don't have anything to do with your final salvation. What determines if you're finally saved is whether you die in a state of grace or not. You either die in God's friendship or you don't. And indulgences before death do not put you into a state of grace if you're not in one. And after your death, your fate is fixed, and indulgences will not change your fate. So indulgences really don't have a bearing on final salvation. What they do have a bearing on is how we grow in the Christian life, and they are essentially an aid to help us grow in the Christian life, and even after this life is over, you can, as you're being freed from your disordered detachments to various things in this life, which is part of the purification process that souls undergo on their way to heaven, indulgences can assist in that process as well. And the basic idea is Christ did more than enough to just save us from hell. He also did enough to completely redeem us from all of the negative consequences of sin. And that grace gets applied to us over the course of the Christian life and on our way to heaven as we're being purified. But not only can Christ help in those situations, but other people can help as well. Not in the same way as Christ, but they can. St. Paul talks about how, for example, he and his associates were ambassadors for Christ, bringing grace to people. He also talks about how he fills up in his body what's lacking in the sufferings of Christ for the sake of his body. So Paul is undertaking personal suffering through his journeys as a way of helping the church. Obviously, there's nothing objectively lacking in Christ's sufferings, but Paul is using this language. In the same way, people today can help each other out. Like if you, as a father, for example, let's say you had a sick child, but you've been doing things you hope will please God, you might turn to God and say, Heavenly Father, if I've pleased you with what I've done, please help my child. And God might do that. And that's the core insight behind the idea of what is sometimes termed the treasury of merit or the treasury of satisfactions. The idea is that Christ and the saints have done things that please God, and then because they've pleased God, God helps out other people. And we even see in Scripture, now this one is not an illustration of the principle of God helping people out on this basis, but we do see this kind of collective metaphor for the things that people have done to please God in Scripture. We see it in the book of Revelation, where John sees the bride of Christ, the New Jerusalem, clothed in fine linen, and he tells us the fine linen represents the righteous acts of the saints. So we see this collective metaphor for all the things that people have done that have pleased God under the influence of his grace. And the so-called treasury of the church, which is the term you'll find in the Catechism, the treasury of the church is the same kind of thing. It's a collective metaphor for all of the things that Christ and the saints have done that please God, and that in favor of which God may then turn and help out other people, either in this life or as they're being purified on their way to heaven. But check out The Drama of Salvation for a lot more on the biblical principles that underlie indulgences.
Harrison, I'm so glad you've been calling, and I hope that we'll continue these conversations, but we have to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Open Forum with Jimmy Akin right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Hang on, Catholic Answers Live will return in a moment.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Go forth and preach the good news. It's not just a suggestion. If you want to take more seriously the command of Jesus to share the gospel with those around you, consider joining St. Paul Street Evangelization. It's a grassroots organization that brings the Catholic faith to the streets in a non-confrontational way. Visit our website, www.streetevangelization.com, to learn more. And don't forget to like us on Facebook. It's time to do our part.
The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
Isn't it awesome that we today do not recognize His presence in the Eucharist? Is it because we really don't go to Him in humbleness of heart and say, Lord, I don't believe, help my unbelief. Lord, I want to see you. I want to recognize you. I cannot live without you. Are we saying that?
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live, open forum. Jimmy Akin, hard to beat all that. Lots of folks on the line, so we'll just get right back to it. And I got to look to see who's next. Oh, yeah. Okay, I'm going the right way. Roseanne in New York, listening on Catholic.com. We're happy to have you, Roseanne. Go ahead with your question.
Hi. I have a sister who believes, she listens to somebody on YouTube, and she believes that the Catholic Church has pagan beginnings and that the Vatican is shaped like a dragon and basilica means serpent. It's difficult to talk to her about all this.
Mm-hmm. So you're looking for some advice on that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So I would say to anybody who made such claims to me, let's take them in reverse order. You mentioned a third thing that looks like serpents. What was that?
No, the Vatican looks like serpents, and then
no,
a basilica
looks like a dragon.
A basilica means snake. Is that what you said?
She said it means serpent.
Serpent. Okay. Basilica does not mean serpent. That's just not where the word comes from. You could confirm this by going to the online etymology dictionary. And basilica is derived. Now, there is a word for a kind of serpent-like creature called a basilisk, but that is not where we get the word basilica. Basilica comes from basileus, which is the Greek word for a king. And so basilicas are referred to a type of building that was very highly prestigious, kind of like kings. And then it eventually became applied to a certain style of church architecture and then to a church that has a certain kind of dignity. But it is not from the word snake. And even if it did, who cares? Words do not mean what they started out as. They mean what they're used to mean. Famous example I cite frequently, Psychelet. The word nice comes from the Latin word necius.
Yes.
Necius meant ignorant or foolish. If you tell your wife she's wearing a nice dress, do you mean she's wearing an ignorant or foolish dress?
I do not even in a secret way.
Yeah, you better not.
I don't.
Okay.
Because I have a nice wife.
Yeah, and who I assume wears nice dresses.
Yeah, right.
So words don't mean where they came from. And words mean what they're used to mean. And this is to try to judge a word simply by where it may have come from is an example of a logical fallacy. And this fallacy is known as the genetic fallacy. It involves considering something based on where it came from rather than on its actual merits, what it actually represents. And it would be, I mean, you could say, let's pick someone, some modern person. Let's suppose there's, I'm thinking Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Okay.
Okay, so Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a Protestant theologian back in the first part of the 20th century, and he protested the Nazis very severely, and it got him in a lot of trouble. And he wrote very movingly about grace and redemption and things like that, and he's widely regarded even in the Protestant community as sort of a 20th century saint. Well, okay, it would be the genetic fallacy to say, Dietrich Bonhoeffer came from Nazi Germany, therefore he's bad.
I see, yeah.
No,
right.
Dietrich Bonhoeffer protested the Nazis. The Nazis persecuted Dietrich Bonhoeffer because he was so opposed to them. So you cannot judge something by where it came from. You have to evaluate it in terms of what it actually is. That's not only true of the word basilica, it's true of the Vatican. Now, the claim was the Vatican looks like a dragon.
I brought the picture
Have you seen the Vatican, Sky Kellett?
Yes, I've seen the Vatican.
Does it look like a dragon?
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't look like a dragon. That's just nonsense. Now, there is a certain perspective from which you sometimes, within what's called the Paul VI Audience Hall, where you look at it from a certain perspective and take a picture from just the right angle, and you can say, ooh, that looks like a snake's head. Well, okay, yeah, but you can see anything in an image if you get to take it from the right perspective.
Yeah.
People see things in clouds all the time. That doesn't mean they're significant. And in the same way, it is not sufficient to insinuate something bad just because you took a picture from a certain angle.
You actually have to use a fisheye lens, too, to get at the picture.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Like one of the things I noticed some years ago after the internet became a thing is, there would be these websites, and they would be liberal or conservative, and they would manage to get these pictures of politicians of the other camp doing things like having their mouth open or their eyes half shut or things like that.
Or holding one arm up so it would make it look like they're waving, but they make it look like a Nazi salute.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, if you get to take the picture when and where you want and frame it the way you want, you can make anybody look bad.
Yeah.
So this is not an actual indicator of quality. Then we had the charge that the Christian faith has pagan origins. Well, my first response to that would be, if so what? That's just another example of the genetic fallacy. The question would be, let's look at the Christian faith right now and say, what qualities does it have, and are those good qualities or not? Not what may have influenced it in the past. So that would be my first response. But my second response would be, well, prove it. I mean, you may think that, but just because someone told you it doesn't mean it's true. What evidence do you have for this? And then let's talk about that evidence. Now, you'll sometimes hear claims, sometimes in Protestant fundamentalist circles about specific things in the Catholic Church or the Christian faith or among atheists about the Christian faith having pagan origins, but it really doesn't. It came from Judaism. Jesus was the Jewish Messiah. And while there was an exchange of cultural and artistic forms and things like that between different cultures, including Israel and the cultures around it, that doesn't allow you to just trot out the genetic fallacy and blast anything that you disapprove of as pagan. Christianity is not fundamentally pagan. It's fundamentally monotheistic, whereas the pagan religions were fundamentally polytheistic. Just on its basic view of God, Christianity is vastly different than pagan religions, and that applies to the Catholic form of Christianity as well. So those are some general things you might want to be aware of. In approaching your sister, I would be polite and respectful and say, well, I understand you think these things. Let's think about them critically. Let's look at alternative views. You had this view proposed to you by someone, but are there other ways of considering it? And you might cover some of the examples I mentioned here, as well as asking her for examples of things that she thinks are of pagan origin and somehow bad. And then, you can either research them and find out if, what degree of evidence there is for the claim, or you can call us back here once you know some of her more specific claims.
Okay, Roseanne?
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Roseanne, you could do me a favor. You don't have to, but if you wouldn't mind, if you wouldn't mind sending the name or the web address of the person who's making these videos, I would like to see them. And we do some rebuttal videos, so it'd be interesting to me to see them. I don't want you to say the name of it on the air, but you could send it to radio@catholic.com. Just shoot us an email at radio@catholic.com. Anybody could, as a matter of fact, if you have something that is on the internet that's negative about the Catholic faith, we are interested in seeing those. Go ahead, Jimmy. Okay. Thanks very much, Roseanne. Appreciate that. Let's go to Adam in Irving, Texas, listening on Guadalupe Radio. So happy to have you with us, Adam. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hey, good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for taking my call. Quick tidbit, I'm on the way to the parish of Trent Horn to fix a leaking dishwasher.
Oh, cool. Well, just so you know, we're close to the end of the show, so what's your question?
Yes, sir. Jimmy, I'm going to allow you to interpolate the intermediate steps. But my argument is the second person of the Holy Trinity, Jesus, became man, not a Martian. And he's in heaven right now with a manly body. And when we're united with our glorified bodies, we'll be able to see and touch him as a man. So my argument from that is that there are no ensouled aliens who require salvation, Martians, intelligent life, because Jesus didn't become a Martian.
Okay.
And I'd like your best rebuttal to that.
Okay, well, off the top of my head, if the argument is that Jesus became a man and therefore other life forms of some type must not exist, that would prove too much because it would apply to other life forms here on Earth. I could say Jesus became a man, not a rabbit, therefore rabbits must not exist. Or Jesus became a man, not an elephant, therefore elephants must not exist. The fact that Jesus chose to become a member of our species doesn't preclude there from being other species even here on Earth. And if we were then to take some of those species off of the Earth, as we have done, we've taken them up into space and done experiments on them. Like one of the first living thing in space was actually a dog named Laika that the Russians put up there. And so it wasn't pigs in space, but it was dogs in space. And
Pigs in Space was awesome.
And so pretty soon we're going to be taking life forms to Mars. In fact, they've probably already gotten there, extremophile microbes on the outside of our space probes that we've already sent. So there can be species of other life forms off of the Earth. And if there can be other species here on Earth and off of the Earth, then if God chose to create species elsewhere in the universe, whether intelligent or not, I can't stop him from doing that. So I would say that the argument, if it worked, would prove too much. And so I don't think it actually works.
I'm going to leave it there because I want to get to as many as I can, and we're really almost at the end. But Adam, do a good job on the dishwasher. Thanks for fixing it.
Yeah.
Nada in Dallas, listening on Guadalupe Radio. You're up. Go ahead with your question as quickly as you can for Jimmy Akin, please.
Yes. Quick question regarding acupuncture. Is it approved by the church if used for your back, for your leg, for medicine, for kind of for healing?
So acupuncture is something that the church does not have a teaching on. Acupuncture is a medical practice coming from China. It's been practiced for several hundred years. And there are different claims made about it. And the church's approach would be to say, let's look at the claims individually because there are different types of acupuncture and they're understood to work in somewhat different ways. And then let's see, does it actually have a therapeutic effect? And those are questions that I actually went into in depth on an episode of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. So if you Google Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World acupuncture, it'll come up and you can watch or listen to that episode, and it'll go through the different claims regarding acupuncture, both from the faith perspective and from the reason perspective.
Nada, that makes sense to you?
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, very, very good. Thank you for the call. And if you're interested in D.B. Cooper while you're at Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, that's the new episode tomorrow.
It is.
D.B. Cooper.
Also, just to drop a few spoilers on acupuncture, the best medical evidence is that acupuncture has, if it has effects, it is very limited and often does not exceed placebo. There are some related practices, like if you take acupuncture, it's called electroacupuncture, where you take acupuncture needles and run an electric current through them.
Yeah.
That can have some effect, but that's not pure acupuncture. That's using electricity on somebody.
Right, okay.
But in the episode on acupuncture, I go through all this and a whole bunch more.
Nada, again, thank you very, very much for the call and the question. And thanks to everybody. Sorry, there's a couple callers we didn't get to. Jimmy will be here tomorrow. We'll do 2 hours with Jimmy, your Bible questions. So that's right, isn't it? Why are you looking at me like that, Darren? No? All right, we're going to do 2 hours of Bible questions with Jimmy. Darren looks like he's looking at the wrong calendar. And also, don't forget, tomorrow morning, Jimmy will be part of that.
Saturday morning.
Excuse me, I beg your pardon. Saturday morning, Jimmy will be part of that big 2-day conference. But you can go over there and sign up right now. It's a free conference of Catholic apologetics with some of the best apologists in the world, some of them answering questions live, including Jimmy Saturday morning. Just go to Catholic.com, go to the top banner there, and sign up. Registration is free. Jimmy, we'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Thanks very much. 2 hours, Jimmy Akin, Bible questions. See you then, God willing. Catholic Answers Live.